Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Let's Talk Arsenal series, a show in which I'm joined by a guest to have a chat about their kind of views and feelings around the club as things stand. And I'm very happy today to be joined by James from AFTV. How do you, mate? Are you well?
Yeah, good, thanks. How you doing, Tom? Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Considering everything that's going on at the moment, it does feel a bit like I was talking to someone the other day about how I'm kind of just longing for that next game just to kind of, to see if a result can change the mood. But there's a worrying and sinking feeling in me that even a win over Southampton's not going to shift kind of the overall feeling about things right now.
Yeah. I said in my fan cam after the Everton game, that result felt like a knockout punch for Arteta. And I don't mean that because I know he's still going to, obviously he's in the job for Southampton. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't be. But I think the feeling is that he'll probably get December because that run is somewhat favourable, though I wonder what is favourable for us now in the league. And I think it felt to me like on the back of Villarreal, I think a lot of Arsenal fans said, I'm still prepared. Oh, sorry, let me mute that.
Right.
I think a lot of Arsenal fans were still in a position where they thought, you know what, it's still not quite his team. It's still not quite his team. So these Villarreals and these moments can happen. Therefore, let's give him the summer and then let's give him to Christmas. That's what a lot of people said. And we'll see if Arsenal are in a better position. And I think the truth is we are in a better position. It's just not much better.
Where were you after Villarreal? Where was your head at with the manager?
I was let me put it this way. I was ready for change. And whether that change was going to be an overhaul in the summer or a new manager, it had to be one or the other. And I think in fairness, I think that Kroenke delivered what, considering a pandemic, considering Arsenal's history of spending, considering the amount of work that needed to be done on this squad, I think they delivered a pretty acceptable summer in terms of replenishing the squad and refreshing the spine. So I was happy with that, and I was ready to see what Arteta could do with it. And I took Norwich as a fresh start, and I've seen things I liked, but not quite enough for me. What about you? Where are you with it?
I mean, after Villarreal, as kind of the listeners know, I was very much of a mind that I think that any other big club would have moved on from their coach at that point. They would have looked at the season finishing 8th. You've been knocked out of a Europa League by our former head coach and by a club that you're expected to beat across 2 legs. You didn't win either of them. I think any other big club at that point would turn around. I mean, arguably earlier on in that season, especially during the festive period, a lot of big clubs probably would have moved on from their coaches. But Arsenal, we know, have always kind of backed their coaches. Even Emery in his first season, when there was moments of difficulty, they stuck by him. Even after we lost the Europa League final, they stuck by him. And it was only until kind of things got untenable with the dressing room breaking apart, again, leading up to that festive period of 2019, that they decided to move on from him. Where I'm at now is that I kind of gave him this season. I said, look, even though I wanted to change after Villarreal, they're not going to move him on. They're going to stick with him. So let's see where this kind of goes. And the 10-game unbeaten run after the 3 games, I accepted the 3 games. I could see the context behind them, the injuries, the missing players, the fact that we hadn't integrated barely any new signings yet. I could contextualize those. But the 10 games after those was good. And we sat ourselves 1 point off top 4. But I think, James, during that 10 games, we saw a period, didn't we, where what we were looking at, you could see cracks and you could see there was issues, and it wasn't like we were blowing these teams away. We weren't winning 4 and 5-0 against Norwich and Burnley and Watford. We were getting by, and I think that Man United and Everton probably showed us that those cracks have, they've been found out.
I think so. I think United and Everton were one of those tricky places to go, but if Arsenal have progressed, they get something out of those. While I don't think it would have been great in terms of putting points on the board, although better than what we obviously delivered with two defeats, I think 2 points, draw at each place, I think we'd have left with a sense of, all right, we wanted to win one of them, but at least we've not lost. At least we've somewhat been competitive in those games. And I think the biggest worry was that I thought we started well against United, and then we fell away. But I did think there were moments from that United game that I did enjoy, and then the Everton game, I just couldn't believe how outclassed we were. And I think if you're kind of to give both teams a ratings on their performance, and maybe this is harsh on Everton, I think they were probably only like a 5 out of 10. I don't think they were that great. We were just like a
No.
1. They weren't that great. They didn't have to do a lot to beat us, and that's really worrying because I like to. Whenever we're judging a manager, I like to look at the big picture. What's he improved? What's he not? And I keep telling myself, well, defensively, it's got better. I think maybe it has in terms of individuals and people I kind of believe in more. But as a collective, it hasn't got better. And this far on, I think there's been moments where Arsenal have been able to dig deep and get through Burnley away. Typically a difficult place, that they're going to rough you up. It's going to be physical. And I thought we dealt with that test quite well. And you look at the FA Cup run. So he's been able to implement a structure. At times, I worry too much of a structure. It's funny because I do think Arteta gets a lot right. I just think he gets so much wrong as well.
I think with the defensive side of things that you picked up on, I agree with you. You look at the area that he's progressed in, and you would say defensively, that's the place in the Arsenal team that we've made progression. No longer have we got the Mustafis, the Socrateses of this world that make these silly errors. Gabriel and Ben White are a much better partnership. Tomiyasu's come in and been brilliant. We've got 2 solid left backs. We've got a really good goalkeeper as well. But in the last 4 games, we've conceded 9 goals. And you look at kind of, if that's what we've been clinging on to with Arteta saying that defensively he's improved us, if that's starting to crumble and that's starting to cause concern, that's where the kind of the alarm bells really start to ring. And you've got these next 3 to 4 games against Southampton, West Ham, of course, which is a huge game, and then Leeds, and then Norwich on Boxing Day. And you think, how many points do you think of, say, the next 3 against Southampton, West Ham, and Leeds? How many points do you think would be enough for the club to make a decision on his future? Because from my money, I genuinely think that we could lose all 3 and they still wouldn't change anything.
Wow. Wow, what a great question. I'll be honest, I think if we lose all 3, I do think he's gone. Because I do think there's going to be something within Josh Kroenke that goes, hold on, we've given you a lot of money, and this needs to improve fast. And a lot of people like to say, well, the Kroenkes don't care, they're not bothered. Well, sure, maybe they're not bothered about winning the big trophies, and that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah.
But they're definitely bothered about being out the Champions League. They're definitely bothered about the revenue streams they're missing out on. They're definitely bothered about them seeming the bad guys. People who are in and around the Kroenkes will tell you that they still don't want to be seen as the villains in this whole thing.
Josh doesn't. I feel like Stan doesn't really care.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
Josh absolutely doesn't. And I always say to people, I look at Josh and Stan differently. I really do.
Yeah.
I think Josh is genuinely, people might call me naive or whatever. I think Josh does want to be a good owner. I think Josh does care. But of course, he's restricted by what he can do. And I think he's trying to do more interviews.
What do you mean by that? Restricted?
I think ultimately it's his dad's company, and if Josh Kroenke wants to give an Arteta a budget of 200 and Kroenke says it's 100, Stan even says it's 100, it's going to be probably about 150. I think there's a little bit of that going on. I think they've tried to back Arteta. They tried to back a project, but it's like the point I made, and someone very kindly shared the video on Twitter, and I retweeted it, that the project doesn't have to die with Arteta. You can still build on it with the next manager. And I would hope that Josh is looking at it in that way and goes, some good stuff's been done. We've built on, we've built some nice foundations. If he loses the next 3, we can get someone in who can build on that. Now, to actually answer your question, what do I think? I honestly think anything less than 2 wins and a draw, there's going to be, and by the way, I want 3 wins. I think he should be winning all 3 of them. But anything less than 2 wins and a draw, and I think there'll be a lot of pressure. So what's the next best thing? That means a win and 2 draws. or 2 wins and a defeat, I still think people will be on him, because then that will be a 7th defeat in 18 games.
Yeah.
That will be, more crucial points dropped against very winnable opposition. I think it could get really toxic if he
Do you
doesn't
think a
get
win and 2 draws keeps his job?
I think it keeps his job. I think it keeps his job, but I often think a lot of this is actually about fan tolerance. Now, we saw Nuno Espirito Santo go because the Spurs fans really, really made a noise about it, rightly or wrongly. But I think ultimately, I hate those lot down the road, but I think they made the right decision. They listened to their fans. And I think there's a little part of Arteta communicates well with us, and I think we like him, and we don't want to really go in that hard. But I think it is last chance to look. There's a lot of I'm on Twitter a lot. There's a lot of big accounts. Yeah. There's a lot of big accounts I love interacting with, people who have really stood by the manager, and I see them now saying it's time to move on.
Yeah,
and that's kind of when I start going, oh, okay, people are really starting to turn now. What do you think? You think even if he loses all 3, he's in?
I just feel like history tells me that this club aren't reactionary in terms of kind of their decision making. I think they look at the investment in the time that he's been there. I think they'll look at what else is out there in terms of options. And I mean, and obviously I'm sure you see in your own chat boxes, and we see it all the time, people throw names in: Zidane, Ten Hag, go get Pochettino from PSG, whatever. People throw names in all the time, but that in reality it's not as easy as that. I mean, you'd see how Ten Hag spoke about the Manchester United role and how he was very committed to Ajax. Just because Antonio Conte's gone to Spurs doesn't necessarily mean that tangibly goes straight into saying that Arsenal can go and get whoever they like. I do think I was surprised by Conte going to Spurs. Don't get me wrong. I was shocked about that. I do maybe look at it as a bit of a short-term thing for him to get back into the managerial setup and then move somewhere else after he leaves them in an absolute rut, like he does most of the clubs he leaves, which I'm fingers crossed hoping happens.
Yeah, we're all hoping for that.
Of course. But I don't necessarily look at that and go, just because Spurs got Conte, it means that Arsenal could go out and get him. I mean, what do you think about kind of saying a hypothetical situation, Arteta has moved on? Are you concerned at the options that are out there that we could realistically go for?
Yeah. I'm not actually. I'm not, because I don't want to say anything's better than Arteta. That'd be really hard. Because I do think Arteta's done some good. Don't get me wrong. But anything in terms of experience, steadying the ship, even an interim till we get the right guy. If results continue, if more Evertons happen, and Everton's a particularly bad one. Arteta's got 9 lives. He survived the bad run from this time a year ago. He survived Villarreal. He survived the start of the season. And now this feels like his 4th big kind of hill to climb. And in fairness, he's always come out of it with a degree of, with some decent results and something that leaves us with hope. But in terms of I think you can get a Graham Potter from Brighton. I really do. And maybe that's not what people want. And if not, that's completely fair enough. But I like Graham Potter. He's got a track record of overachieving abroad, coming to the Premier League, taking a side like Brighton, who people forget we're a very boring side. They kind of about staying in the league, made them entertainers, made them one of the most exciting attacking Premier teams in the Premier League, and that's not even exaggeration. That the numbers tell you that. And he's kind of built on it this season, where they've become a little bit more clinical. They're sitting in the top half of the table, I believe. Brendan Rodgers, I think Brendan Rodgers is one of those managers. After 2 years, I think it does start to go a bit stale for him. But I don't think there's anything wrong with 2 years of Brendan Rodgers and then a Ten Hag and then the next guy. I don't know. I think. But it'd be about building on it with a manager who plays the kind of football Arteta's been trying to instill. And a lot of people say we're boring, we're aggressive, we don't play good football under Arteta. I slightly disagree. I think he is trying to play good football. I just don't think we're very good at it. I think Man United is a really good example of that. For 25 minutes, we looked. I don't think it's exaggerated to say we looked awesome. I know we weren't creating a load of chances, but the press on the ball, the way we were moving it, they still have great players, and I thought we were not humiliating them because we weren't scoring the goals, but they were probably sat there thinking, "Oh my God, we can't get the ball off Arsenal in our own backyard."
There was a
And
portion of the
then
Liverpool game where we went toe to toe with them as well in the first half.
Liverpool game, there was a lot to like in that first 35, 38 minutes or whatever. But it fell away. So what's that? Is that inexperience? Is that coaching? Is it whatever? So I think a manager with these ideals can build on that and make us a more consistent force. So I'm looking at the likes of Rodgers and Potter, and that might be underwhelming. If you can get a Ten Hag, great. But I do think there's managers out there that are worth, picking up the phone to. Who would you like? Is there anyone particular you're thinking?
The thing is, the options out there. Look, if you said Ten Hag was coming in tomorrow, I'd move on Arteta today. I don't think there's too much of a debate about that. What he's done at Ajax is brilliant. Yes, there are questions about whether or not that could translate to a league outside the Eredivisie, and of course, he's done well in the Champions League as well. But it is a different kettle of fish, and he would be without his right-hand man, Mark Overmars, as well. So, I mean, you look at some managers, some technical directors, when they move, it doesn't necessarily work because they've not got those same people around them, and it was the team that was working, not necessarily the individuals. Sure. Graham Potter is someone that a year ago I was very, very against the idea, because I looked at kind of 2020 for them. They won one game at home in the entirety of 2020. Guess who that was against? It was us. Yes, it was the only team they managed to beat at home.
I'd say Tottenham, but yes, that's right. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was us with the Neil Maupay Guendouzi situation. That was the only home game they won.
The day the greatest rivalry in football started between Maupay and Kai.
Yeah, unbelievable. How their careers have verged away from each other since then. And then 2021, he's kind of, we can see what he's trying to do. The XG statistics don't lie. What the chance creation stats don't lie. His style of play is clearly something that if Brighton had a good striker, I mean, in January, if they don't sign a striker, Graham Potter will be looking up at his sporting directors, technical directors, and thinking, what on earth are you doing? Because the potential for this team to explode is there. And no offense to Danny Welbeck, but he's obviously moving on. Neil Maupay is whilst he's a decent striker, he's not the type to be clinical enough to get the best out of the chance they're creating. They signed that Locadia from the Eredivisie. I think it was PSV that he was at previously, and he never really did anything. They need to, I mean, funny thing is they could come in for Eddie Nketiah, who we know, given a chance, can be clinical, and he takes them to that next level, and we'll be scratching our heads thinking, why didn't we give him more chances?
But pips us to top 7.
The race for top 7 is going to be electric at the end of this season.
Exactly.
But I suppose discussing the manager, discussing kind of the solutions, the next part of the conversation, and chat box for those listening, thank you so much, by the way, and do drop a like on the video and subscribe if you're new, and we're going to be taking some of your questions in a short while. But just on that fan section, that's kind of where I wanted the last portion of this bit before we go to questions is obviously working on the biggest fan channel, I was going to say Arsenal perspective, but in the world. How do you perceive the fan social element of how things are for you right now? How do you feel about the way in which Arsenal fans are reacting to things right now?
Alluded to it earlier with Twitter, but obviously we do this thing. We do a full-time show immediately after the game's finished, where people send their videos in, and it's amazing. Fans all over the world, and there seems to be a general consensus that people like Arteta. That's kind of this is what annoys you when people who are Arteta out. I think it's missed that people like Arteta, and that there is something in that there absolutely is. That gets you a certain, to a certain level. I don't think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was a good manager, but I think the players liked him and played for him, and I think the fans liked him, so gave him a chance when things went wrong. And through that, they discovered a little bit of stability, a little bit of consistency, a little bit of something till eventually the quality of coaching kind of took its toll. And I think people like Arteta, but are starting to, I don't think it's starting to, actually. I think people are now just ready for a change. I think everyone unanimously is ready to see something different. 2 years is a long time in football. We've had 2 years with Mikel Arteta. And I think the question is, Turkish asked a great question on Supporters Club the other day. He said, Was it? I can't remember. Anyway, I can't remember what show it was. But the question was, have we progressed? And
Mm.
I think the answer was, no, really. When you're
Yeah.
really kind of being really sure, I think the squad's in a better place, and the academy's in a better place. I think the culture of the club, I think the fans are more closer to the club, whether it's by a lot or not. But really, in the grand scheme of things, not a lot has changed, not in the way we kind of hoped. And I think people are ready to see another person who can take it on a level. That's the feeling I get. I don't think anyone's gonna, abuse him or force it. I think there's still a hope for some people that, you know what, when we have this run in December, he might still turn it around. But deep down, I think if someone was asked to hit the red button, I think they probably would.
Yeah, I think when the thing we find with Arsenal fans is that there's a spectrum. Is we have a spectrum of along kind of this line from almost toxic positivity all the way down to the other end of toxic negativity. And I think where thankfully, most of us sit is this kind of this middle ground where in the middle you're sitting on the fence and you're not really sure. And on the right hand side of that, you've got say the slightly not necessarily right, I'm trying it all political, right and left. Let's just say one side of that middle, you've got kind of people that are, really like the manager. I think that this is a process that you've got to kind of put faith in, and that it's not going to be turned around within even 2 years. It's going to take more time, more signings, more investment, and it's going to take Arteta time in himself to develop as a coach. And then you got slightly on the other side of things where you got people going, in this game, you can't allow this amount of time. And whilst you're trying to progress and work through your project, the teams around you aren't playing by the same rules as you and are moving at a faster pace because they're investing, they're sacking, they're reappointing, they're moving forwards continuously. And no matter how long you give a project, if the teams around you are moving at a faster pace, you're never going to catch them. So it's a fine line, and it's interesting how you see the spectrum of fan opinions change. And just before I go on to questions, I'm really interested in your thoughts on this. Have you kind of from the perspective of since you joined AFTV as well, how have you found kind of working there, and how have you found the change? I think because I mean, from my perspective, I've noticed a huge change since like the likes of yourself and the change that have gone on there, and the perception of AFTV as well from what it was previously and to what it's turning into is really positive. So tell me kind of about that process that you've been on that journey.
Yeah, so I joined about just over a year ago. And, I watched AFTV before. I found fan cams weirdly therapeutic. I was like, oh, I'm glad someone feels the way I'm feeling. I completely acknowledge that the channel's not for everyone. Not every character is for everyone and every person. And when I say character, I mean their character. You know what I mean? Because people start going, oh, it's fake. They're just, obviously.
I know what you mean.
I've really enjoyed my year there, and there has been a lot of change. We moved into new studio space. We brought in new presenters. We brought in new staff. Obviously, the launch of the Don Robbie channel, and I know kind of the way people feel about it sometimes. So, and by the way, a lot of people love the channel, obviously, and a lot of people,
I mean, we wouldn't have all the subscribers if it did.
Well, of course, and a lot of people, feel a certain way. But I think it would shock people how many times when we sit in meetings, we plan content. Fun enough, I've got a content meeting a little bit later today. How many times we sit there and we think, how is this serving the fans? And it's genuinely a question we always ask, are we representing kind of all sides here? Because everyone feels differently. And I think it's important that we also say we don't want to pretend we represent the fans. We just want to give them a voice and they can represent themselves on the channel. I think there's a slight difference there. If Turkish has a feeling about the Cronkies and we do a show on it, that's not us saying this is what every Arsenal fan feels, here's a show on it. It's about us giving our opinions, but we always want to look at all sides. So a little bit later is a little exclusive. A little later today, there's a video coming out that I did, just sort of a piece to camera video, which was basically 5 things Arteta can change to turn this around. And the idea behind it is, rightly, every Arsenal fan is feeling really down about what's going on, have been really on Arteta's back, but not everyone feels that way. And so there should be something that says, well, for those who are kind of still back in the process, and for those who aren't ready for a change, here's what we can. Let's rally the troops. Here's what we can do to get it right. So over the last year, and it's difficult for me to say what's changed because I wasn't there before.
True.
Obviously, a lot of people moved on to do their own channels, and other things are going on. And I personally, have good relationships with most of those people, and good luck to everyone and what they're doing. But we've had to adapt to changes. We've had to look at our own content. What do the fans enjoy? What do they not? We're constantly adapting and evolving because there's a lot of great fan channels. We talk about this channel. We talk about TGT. We talk about lots of great channels, the Arsenal Lounge, whatever, but all these places. Curtis is a great channel, Curtis Shaw TV, all of them. And we talk about them, and we look at what people are doing. We go, that's great. How can we learn from it? How can we do better? How can we, all these things. So yeah, from the last year, it's been a lot of constant transition. I don't think we've really kind of fully settled yet because we're still adding, and evolving and changing things. But it's been great fun. And I definitely find it, I used the word therapeutic before. I definitely enjoy leaving my Arsenal at work and coming home and going, right, I've dealt with that there. So I've had a great time of it. And, hopefully we just keep moving on to bigger and better things. But it's a great team, and they're fully supportive of all my ideas and things we want to do. And yeah, it's just about constantly thinking, can we keep giving people a chance to? It's why we do Twitter Spaces every Monday at midnight now, to get people on. It's why Cecil does Ask the Fans, so it can go around the community and ask people. And we want to keep bringing more of that content because it's the authentic content that made the channel what it is.
What do you think there's still misconceptions about it? Do you think that, I mean, from my perspective, and obviously we do this series on the channel called Let's Talk Arsenal Fans, where I have a chat with a fan for an hour, and we've had a couple of people. Obviously, we've had Lee, we've had Mo, and the kind of response, if I've had anyone that's either still associated with AFTV or has previously been associated with AFTVs, and there's always people going, why are you getting them on? They're on AFTV. Yeah. Do you think there is a misconception, or do you think there's and do you understand maybe why people feel that way?
Yeah, because I think typically the moments that maybe go viral aren't always the ones people want to see, or certainly maybe in previous years. I also just understand that I know a lot of really good people I've met a lot of really good people who've got really good fan channels. Or do really good work elsewhere, and I just don't necessarily like their work, but I like the person. So sometimes it can just be that. I do Tactical Insight with Graham. Okay, I think Tactical Insight. I think you got to work really hard to find anything you're offended by in Tactical Insight. But
that XG stats got me right.
Yeah, you guys. Yeah, you and your bloody average positions map. How dare you? But not everyone likes it. And that's fair enough that people don't have to like it.
How do you feel about that? When do you see a negative comment? Or what kind of negative comments do you see about? Because you said a second ago, like how it takes kind of something special to really dislike a Tactical Insight show. Yeah. So what kind of comment do you get, and how does that make you feel when you see them?
I think fair enough. I genuinely, when I first joined, I was a pretty anxious person. Actually, I still am sometimes. I'm an overthinker. So when I see kind of negative comments on a show or a fan cam I do, or Tactical Insight, I just think that's your opinion. As long as it's semi-constructive. I saw one comment the other day. People are really lovely in the comment section actually for Tactical Insight, but one person said something like bang average analysis, and I said, well, not to discredit Graham and I's work, because we work really hard and we do our best with what we can. But it's not meant to be Monday Night Football because we don't have the broadcast footage and we're not experienced like Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher. It's meant to be digestible. Kind of, I want to know a little bit more about the tactics side of things. I want to know a little bit more about what the numbers are saying, and we serve that. So people who are asking us to come and explain the greatest philosophies of football and all, and the Guardiola way and all that, we're not going to do that. We're not in a place to do that. So I always take everything with just a step back and I think, oh, do they have a point? And I try my best not to get too offended by it. But on your comment, on your question about misperceptions with AFTV, there are a couple that really bother me. The first is the you guys want people to lose. Sorry, you guys want Arsenal to lose.
Yeah.
Because
losing equals more money is the argument, isn't it?
That's the idea. And I think the first thing is that gaining this. Robbie puts it really, really well. Like anything in football, if something shocking happens or something newsworthy happens, we win a game we weren't expected to win, we win a big game, or we lose a game we weren't expected to lose, those numbers are they're all gonna go up. Of course they are. It's a shock. It's wow. Oh, that's surprising. I think our most viewed video in 2020 was the stream for the FA Cup final. That's that, and we won that. So it's anything that is kind of big newsworthy, whatever. That's the first thing. Secondly, I always say this to people: people can focus on an acceleration of views in 1 or 2 videos, or 1 day's worth of fan cams or whatever. But if Arsenal, like last year, we lost to Southampton in the FA Cup 4th round, right? I'm sure the cynics are saying big numbers. There you go. AFTV will be happy. Well, no, because firstly, and this is the most crucial bit, we're Arsenal fans, and it hurts to lose, and we always you see our moods around the place on a Monday and all that. It hurts. But secondly, it means we're not doing, if we're knocked out of the FA Cup 4th round, it means we're not doing a preview for the 5th round. We're not doing a watch along for the 5th round. We're not doing fan counts for the 5th round. So we miss out on all that. We've dropped so low. We're now out of Europe completely. That's what 10 to 12 streams and all the content around that we're not doing in the year. So this idea that it benefits us financially to lose, for me, well, not just for me. I think the numbers will tell you it's wildly off the charts. But but I understand. People. I understand some of the criticism. But yeah, I wanted to put that bit to bed. This idea that it's better for us if we lose, just absolute nonsense.
It's something that I think all fan channels as well, no matter what level, and if pretty much almost Arsenal club creators across a multitude of channels have had at one stage or another, one of their videos is kind of it's hit bigger views than the average because of either something that just the event, or because of what they were saying, or because of a transfer or whatever. I mean, I think ours this summer was I did an hour-long moan about how we didn't sign Emi Buendia, and that got like more views than most of the videos on the channel at the moment. And granted, there was a fair few Aston Villa fans, I think, that were just lauding in it all, but I do find it strange. And I also find that argument a little bit flawed when you consider the club that you're covering, because Arsenal tend to win. Maybe this isn't true as much as it used to be, but Arsenal do tend to win more games than they lose. So from a business perspective, it wouldn't make too much sense to cover Arsenal. So I do find that strange. Yeah.
I've got to say, you got to be some guy to follow a club around the whole country in Europe and then go on their tours in the hope that they might lose games. I mean, bloody hell, that I've got to say that would be some business model. But it's a load. Actually, what did make me happy, I think someone was watching Premier League years during the Invincible season and found during one of the celebrations that they paused it and they saw Robbie in the background. And I quite like that people saw that, because it's he's been going to Arsenal like for as long as he can remember, and it's it's a good question. It's the one I'm not here to tell people like the channel. You have to like the channel. You like what you like. You like who you like, and that's absolutely fine. But this idea that we want to lose is madness.
It is madness. I mean, from my perspective, I've criticised certain things, I've praised certain things. That has never been one that I can look at with any kind of logic in terms of a criticism. Let's jump into the chat box and ask some questions. First of all, Curtis, thank you so much for the nice comment, mate. Really appreciate that. And
I love Curtis, man.
I'm sure we'll be sorting something out very soon, mate. Again, it's about kind of, we come back to that whole point of, we're Arsenal content creators. We're not always going to agree. Curtis isn't going to agree with a lot of my views. I'm not going to agree with a lot of Curtis's views. But if you can have a general conversation and you can keep it respectful, that's all that we really want at the end of the day. So let's go to Omar, who says, do you think our backroom staff that have been here since the Wenger days need to go like the sports psychologist? The idea that we need to remove every semblance of the Wenger era to move on. Do you think there's any credence in this theory?
I mean, I'm not worried about the sports psychologist and I think I heard that like pictures of the Invincibles and stuff were taken from the training ground or something too, because it was considered to be putting pressure on the current. I don't know where I heard that. I can't remember if it was an interview I was watching. No, I think it's a good question, Omar. I get your point. Do you need a complete clean of the whole thing to be able to start again? And maybe maybe there's something in that for sure. But my feeling is football can be really overthought and overcomplicated. It doesn't need to be. Good manager with good players is going to get good results. I just think it's that. And I don't think Arsenal have had a proper combination of the two for a long, long time. And we talk about Emery, Arteta, the end of Wenger. I think it's been a long, long time.
Absolutely. Probably since the early 2000s, we think back to, since it's been then. I mean, with that question, it then turns into how far do you go? Do we have to move stadiums because Wenger built the Emirates effectively?
Change the club name, all that.
Yeah, exactly. Go back to being called Woolwich. Is that what we need to do? I think it's like the whole chair leg analogy where you cut a little bit off a chair leg and eventually by the end of it, you've only got a seat left with no chair leg. So exactly. I think it is a case of how far you go back. Bulgarian Guna says, did the club jump the gun on promoting Arteta to manager? I know that King earlier in the chat box, sorry King, we missed your question, it was right at the start, asked something along these similar lines. Is this where his woes began? More responsibilities than simply being a head coach?
What a great question. Before I say yes or no, I think he needed the title as manager to do some of the things he wanted to do. AKA be more involved in transfers with Edu. I think that was a big problem where Emery wanted certain players. They gave him the plan B, the backup, the Sanyehi alternative, all that. And I think you hear that, Edu wanted to bring in Neto from Barcelona as our goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And Arteta stood firm and said, no, he might be cheaper, he might be, but no, I want Ramsdale. So I think to a degree, Arteta did need that responsibility because, as I said, for all we think of him as a coach, I think he's done some good in terms of rebuilding the squad and addressing the club culture. However, yes, they did jump the gun to a degree because I don't think he'd done enough to merit it yet. I know he won the FA Cup, but I don't think he'd done enough. And I don't know how it works, but can you really not write in the contract that, head coach, PS, Arteta's also going to be working on transfers? Do we? Yeah. Because there was always going to be the extra. Our first manager since Arsene Wenger, that's pretty. People were starting to compare Arteta and Edu to Wenger and Dean, and I just thought it was all a little unnecessary, in my opinion. And I did feel this at the time, but maybe he needed that title for certain good things to happen.
Yeah, I think you raised some good points about the transfers, especially. I have a lot of time for Edu.
I do too, actually.
I like a lot of what he's done. I think that recruitment-wise, sales-wise, he needs to improve. We know that, but it has been a very pandemic-affected period that he's been in charge of that role. So I do have a little bit of leniency there. But recruitment-wise, I like the strategy. I like going younger. I like the identification that we can't necessarily compete with the Chelseas, the Cities to sign certain players. What we can do is we can identify players that will develop into players that would be starting for the likes of Chelsea and City. So that I'm on board with. But the manager thing, putting on an equal playing field with Edu and Edu no longer being kind of of a higher level in terms of seniority, it was probably a bit of an issue. And I remember listening to David Ornstein, I think it was on the Arscast, said something along the lines of there were individuals within the club that weren't too backing of the idea of Arteta becoming manager. So that split and deviation, I suppose, is a little bit of a concern. Yo-Yo says, is it ever worth developing a manager at the cost of the squad? I can't think of any example. Nagelsmann is unique and started his coaching as soon as he was injured.
Yeah. My answer to that is no. I don't. I think players score the goals. Players clear it off the line. Players make the tackles and run around and do all the things on the pitch that get you the, I understand there's a degree of, Arteta can learn on the job. And at Arsenal, though, it doesn't, with this younger squad, maybe I think maybe I'm speaking incorrectly for people, but I think most people like this squad. I think most people like the kind of the main
majority
15, 16 players. I think people like them, but they're young. And I think if it was a squad we liked that were in their 26, 27 years and Arteta showed some promise, maybe they would have enough experience and know-how and quality to get us through the moments where Arteta's lacking, it's holding us back. I think when it's a young squad looking to Arteta for guidance, but he's looking to the youngsters to get them through. Let's be honest, right? This is the one thing I do feel quite cynically about when it comes to Arteta. The amount of pressure on Saka and Smith Rowe, is unforgivable for me.
The expectation on them is massive.
It's outrageous. I've heard fans, rival fans on other channels say, "Are they even that good?" I don't even think that's a completely unfair question, because the way they're hyped and the way they're talked about, I know actually where they're coming from. They're talked about as these superstars, but they're not superstars. The hype comes from the fact that they can be one day, because what they're doing at such a young age is really more than we should be expecting. But Saka isn't Riyad Mahrez yet. But that should be okay to say. But
he's
for
20.
A team of a club of Arsenal's size, Saka needs to be Mahrez.
That's a really good point.
It's a weird one. I don't like the amount he's been resting on the youngsters to get him through, if I'm honest. I don't even think he means to sometimes. I think when you're desperate for
how much do you then think, sorry to cut in, how much do you then think because you say he's putting a lot of pressure on the youngsters, but I suppose to play devil's advocate, you would say that the senior players, Aubameyang, Thomas Partey, I know Xhaka's been injured, Lacazette can't really get in the team as much, Leno's no longer in the side because of Ramsdale. How much can you point the finger at Arteta for leaning on the youngsters when his senior figures aren't performing?
Yeah. I suppose it's the default reaction. You guys are delivering, so I'll go to you. But then the question is, why are Lacazette and Aubameyang and Partey not performing?
Yeah.
Let's go through each one. Partey, was he rushed back at times? Was he overplayed at times? Does it help that he has a different partner every week? I'm not sure. His last 3 games has been Xhaka and Nani Lokonga. I don't know if that helps him. Then you go to Lacazette. I know he's better when it comes to his back to goal and holding up the ball, but he's basically asked to play as a number 10. Does that suit him? I feel like we've taken Lacazette. Let's be honest, people look at Lacazette as a bit of a lump up front. But he used to be a mobile, pass and move, quick feet in the air. He used to be quite a nimble striker who had some, had quick feet, had quality in the box. And he used to be a bit of a killer with his finishing. We don't see that anymore. We don't see him in those dangerous areas. So why is that? And Aubameyang used to be an expert at running off the shoulder and, poacher in the box and knowing where to be. Where's that? You see him picking up the same, spaces every time. So again, you look at the manager, sure, the experienced players need to step up, and I've been very vocal about that. But at what point are you just not devising a system that's going to help them, or overcoaching them too much? It could be that as well.
Zander says, and keeping in line with this Partey situation, do you drop Partey until he leaves the African Cup of Nations in the hope that he finds form with Ghana? 11 Premier League games, he has been dribbled past 17 times. Lokonga, 11 Premier League games, has been dribbled past just once. I mean, just on top of that, I did find it one of the biggest criticisms I've had for Arteta in the last couple of weeks is that Lokonga has been by far our best central midfielder, and in our biggest 2 games of the season against United and Everton, didn't play a minute. That exactly. I find staggering. Yeah.
So weird to me when we spent 15 to 20 mil on Lokonga, wherever it is. He's 21, so he's not like 17, 18. You know, he's good age, and you know, and he's Arteta's signing. And then decides off the back of some good performances, he doesn't play in the United game. That was strange to me. But what I'll say about Partey, I think Thomas Partey he's a different level, and this is bad form. This is all it is. It's just bad form to me. Maybe I should apply that to Arteta and Aubameyang and all that, but for some reason I don't. For some reason Partey feels different to me. I think he can be on his day. And I guess that maybe is the argument for him not being world class. But I think on his day, he can be world class. And I think you do persist with him. He would be in my starting 11 for these games over Christmas in the hope he can build momentum, in the hope he can find his form. Because I think if Partey starts to control midfield in the way he has shown at times at Arsenal he can, then I do think it takes us up a few levels. So he's different to me, Partey. Others, rotate, get the form players in, sure. But Partey, I think, stays in the team for me. He's a bit of an exception.
Yeah, it's been a really tough one for me. I dropped him in my lineup for Southampton, mainly because I just feel like that maybe a rest does him good. Obviously, we played on Monday night. We're playing on Saturday. He played on the Thursday before that. Maybe just being taken out of the firing line for a game, bring him back in for the West Ham game when we really need our best team. Xhaka is an interesting option at the moment because he divides so much opinion amongst the fan base.
How do you feel about Xhaka? Sorry to cut you.
I know it's fun. I've gone so back and forth on Xhaka. Like I've defended him at times because I don't like. Last season, I thought he was our best central midfielder, but kind of the best of a bad bunch, rather than necessarily standing out as being good. I think he's good for our left flank. I think he combines well with Tierney really, really well. And that's something that, especially in the Brighton game, Lokonga really struggled with was, utilising our left flank. But then he reacted and responded in I think it was the Aston Villa game, and played really well with Tavares and Emile Smith-Rowe in particular. So it's about, if you're going to drop Partey, do you bring Xhaka back in to add some seniority and have that kind of level of leadership that he does bring? I mean, we can debate all day about his ability, but I have no doubts about his leadership skills in the team. And then you put him next to Lokonga and have that dynamic working? Or do you look at what happened against Watford, which is that Maitland-Niles and Lokonga were brilliant together, and since then we haven't used that combination? Do you go back to that? I went with Xhaka alongside Lokonga, and I actually moved us to a 3-4-3 just because I felt like something needs to change drastically, and I feel like we need to add that stability back to the defense because we're conceding too many goals and silly opportunities. So go with Tierney and Tavares. Tierney in that Scotland role that he plays at left centre back, nice. Bring Tavares into that left wing back role. I think Tomiyasu's improved his offensive game drastically since arriving. Use him in the wing back role. Ben White played at right centre back in a back three for Brighton excellently. Play him there and let Gabriel be the middle. So I would do something as drastic as that. I don't think that's what will happen. But yeah, the Xhaka scenario. I mean, with you, did you think the contract was a mistake with Xhaka? Yeah.
I thought it was a horrible mistake. I thought it was and I thought it was a horrible, horrible reading of the room from us. I almost think, and by the way, they know it because they didn't even announce it. So they know.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it, when you think about it?
Yeah. I understand that what the manager wants should really take precedent over what the fans want. I get that. I do. Fans don't want to hear that. But of course it should, because he's the coach. He sees what he sees, and he's got the know-how and all that. But I just thought, this is sound horrible, because I think Xhaka is somewhat scapegoated. But I also do feel he has been at the heart of our decline. That doesn't mean it's his fault. But and it's a style thing maybe. And anyone in the comments who likes Xhaka, do acknowledge that maybe it's a stylistic thing for me. I don't like midfielders when I don't really know what it is. I don't really know what he does. Like I know in terms of, well, he drops to left centre back and he opens a space for Tierney to get forward and Smith Rowe to drop inside. He's all part of this positional play magic and the progression up for sure. But that's kind of good to the final third. What beyond that? And some of the numbers, a lot of people said he played well against Everton. I was one of them. I thought he did okay against Everton. For his comeback, I thought he did well. But I think he was the Arsenal midfielder with the most passes, most touches, or he was up there. But he doesn't register a single key pass in that. And that for me is kind of telling, because I'm like, you're on the ball so much.
Yeah.
What are we really? And he doesn't rank highest when it comes to tackles and interceptions either. So I'm kind of like, what do you do? But I know if I really break it down, I know what he does. But I just think it's time to. I don't think you can look at any other midfielder in the top 4 last season and be sitting there going, well, what does that midfielder do? What's their role? What's their I don't think you can say about anyone else. And that for me is quite staggering.
Yeah, I was just while you were speaking, I was curious about his passing. So I'm just gonna throw up.
Yeah, I might have got the numbers wrong, but yeah, here we go.
No, so that's this pass map. I mean, you got 2 passes into the box there. You got one that reached its target, and you got one that didn't. But it's this space around the D, this empty space, that I want to see my central midfielder playing passes directly into that space to the striker to link up with play, and you can see where most of his passes are. They're to the left flank, and they're to move forward Tierney on that side, and he does like to combine with his associate central midfielder, and that's why you got those lateral passes going to the right hand side. But yeah, I do want to see more. I mean, I thought he was excellent against Spurs, and if you look at that, it's a very similar kind of pass map, and that space around the D is again vacant. And I want him to do more, and not him. I just want my central midfielder to do more into that space. So that's
but you know what's funny, Tom? So I think you're right. I think it was very good against Spurs. But then the question comes back to Arteta. So you want Xhaka to drift to the left, but that kind of passing matrix suggests to me a defensive midfielder. It suggests the guy who dictates from deep. But then why do we not see Partey get forward more? So what he's almost got is Partey as kind of a lone holding distributor, Xhaka doing it from the left side. Tomiyasu, we know, kind of comes inside from right back. So I kind of see where the space is being filled out. There's a lot of distributors. There's a lot of passes. And the idea is that Tavares or Tierney, Smith Rowe, Odegaard, Saka, Aubameyang, they're the 5 that are kind of meant to make things happen. But I just don't think I don't think you can succeed in modern football without your central midfielders being just more involved than that. I just don't. When you talk about the great sides, you talk about Keane and Vieira and Yaya Toure and Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard for a reason, because they were so crucial in terms of what they did in the middle. He's a great example. Jose Mourinho. People used to say, pragmatic and all that. But when he came back at Chelsea in 2014-15, he built a midfield of Matic and Fabregas. Now, Matic almost did a lot of that Xhaka role. I think he was more dynamic in his better days, but he did that Xhaka role to a degree. But he did it from a much more central position, not drifting out wide. And Fabregas was allowed to express himself. So that was the point of having a Matic, so that the other central midfielder could flourish going forward a bit more. And that's my kind of issue. If that's what Xhaka's meant to be, then I need to see his partner being given more license, and maybe that comes back again to the system and all that. I hope I'm making sense. I'm just
and I think you don't even have to go as far back as the Vieiras and Gilbertos of this world. I think you can go back to the Coquelin Santi Cazorla combination, to be honest. And I think that
a fantastic example.
With Coquelin, he would be that sweeper of a midfielder, and he would be disciplined, and Santi Cazorla would push forwards, combined with Mesut Ozil in the number 10 slot ahead of him, to the point where both of them would effectively become a 4-3-3 of a single 6 and 2 8s, with Ozil slightly playing further ahead. Or you had Ramsey in there as well that would do a similar job too. So I think that with Arteta is that he clearly doesn't know his best team, or that if he does, it's not good enough. And the two kind of pivot midfielders is either, I mean, the options that we have are Xhaka, Partey, Lokonga, Maitland-Niles, and El Neni. And all 5 of those players, none of them you would say have characteristics of a Santi Cazorla at all. Partey is the closest you can get to the Vieira style, where you've got an absolute dogged runner that just pushes and transitions and progresses. But he's so out of form right now, we're just not seeing that from him. The other option is to say, drop Partey, bring Lokonga in, ask him to sit, and then in January, bring someone in on loan for 6 months that can be that. I mean, it's interesting we're linked with Wijnaldum as a player, because arguably he could play that role of that number 8 style advanced central midfielder that can be expressive and get into the box and score goals, as he has done and has done at PSG, even though he's not necessarily been settled in. He's already got 3 goals, I think, in 10 games. So
wow, there you go.
He is scoring. So I think
it does feel to me that sorry, Tom.
Go on. No, fine.
No, I was gonna say it does feel to me that Arteta, you know, if we gave him an infinite amount of time, we will see a good Arsenal side, because once he's got all 11 of his own players at the age he wants them to be, you know, more familiar with his coaching methods, probably will, as he says, the project will go bang. It probably will all go bang and actually be quite good. Football just doesn't allow for that time. No. That's the thing. Football doesn't allow. And Arsenal fans are right not to want to spend that time. Where, you know, I think we've been incredibly patient as a fan base. And I know money shouldn't be a factor, but it does play a part that we pay some of the highest ticket prices in the country. It does, you know, merchandise is so expensive these days. You want the new Arsenal shirt, you've got to fork out a lot of money for it. And I think Arsenal fans are right to kind of say, well, we're being taken along on the ride, and we are doing our bit to support, because the Emirates Stadium is still full all the time. And, you know, the away crowd is unbelievable. The away fans are superb. So, you know, I think we're right to demand a little bit more. You know, I remember when the kits came out, I remember someone saying, I'll pay this in 3 installments, please. You know, and it's like, funnily enough, for people, places like Klarna and stuff, you can actually do that now. But, you know, that was kind of the joke, was if you're not willing to put up immediately and deliver immediately, why should we? And I get the frustration from Arsenal fans. I do.
Yeah. For a long, long time, Arsenal fans have been the most taken for granted supporters in the table.
I think so.
Without a shadow of a doubt, with the ticket, as you bring ticket prices, the cost, the previous lack of communication from the ownership with the fan base, which is hopefully, with what Josh is trying to do, improving. There's still a lot that needs to change, still a lot that needs to be done for better representation and stuff like that. But I think that until Arsenal fans start to get, and I use the word respect because I think that's what it is, the level of respect that they need. And I say you use the word need, not deserve, because Arsenal fans and fans in general do need that respect. You need to show that respect. You don't need to deserve respect like it's a fan base. The reason why the club exists is because of a fan base. So there's no deserved side of it. It is that fans need that respect, because, you know, it's always going to be earned from them existing. Do you want to close out the show with any final thoughts, James?
Yeah, it was just a follow-up to what you were just saying there. I also think Arsenal fans are some of the most unfairly criticised. I do think that. I think, you know, we're one of the biggest clubs in the country, and that brings a lot of eyes on us. A lot of when Arsenal lose to Everton, you know, it's a big deal. And I think sometimes people feel, the one that always gets me is Arsenal fans aren't patient. Madness to me. I mean, how you could say that, I don't know. But, you know, Arsenal, while I've spent a lot more in recent years, haven't spent the money City and Chelsea have spent, or the money United have spent. We don't have Jurgen Klopp, who is just a mastermind, a genius. And so there is a little bit of, I always get a little bit bitter when I feel that Arsenal fans are kind of being, listen, mockery is part of football, and we all banter that. Hell, I went semi-viral for a TikTok the other day, which I was semi-embarrassing.
See, that's why I don't have TikTok.
It was my first one, and
nice!
What a debut, eh? So,
did I think I saw this? Was this the head thing?
Yes. I can't. Still to this day, I can't
I did see that. Yeah,
yeah.
My other half showed me that. She came up on her, and I tell you, she doesn't follow anything Arsenal related
There
besides
you
me.
go.
So the fact
It
it
made
came up
her,
on
she
her
found
phone.
it somehow. But you got to laugh at the. You got to. As before the United game, you got to banter them and take the L when you take them. If we win, we'll probably re-release the second album, but we'll see. But yeah, I just think things. I always like to round off shows by saying this: things come in cycles. I think in football, and while we should do everything we can to demand the best from our club, and the club should do everything they can to make this process happen quicker and bring the glory days back as soon as possible. Never lose faith. Like it kind of all does come back around by hook or by crook, whether it's luck or calculated. Arsenal will be a force again one day.
Fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed. James, thank you so much, mate, for coming on the show. Really appreciate your time. Tell people really where they can find you.
Yeah, bloody hell, I get asked this question. I always forget what my handles are. I think it's on Twitter, James AFTV. On Instagram, you flip it, so it's AFTV James. And then otherwise, I'm just on AFTV all the time. Don't have my own channel. Maybe one day. But yeah, I'm just there doing tactical insight and stuff with Graham and giving my thoughts. Video dropping tonight. If you want to know what 5 things Arteta can do to turn this around, that'll be out tonight. So yeah,
I look forward to it.
Having me, Tom. Really appreciate it.
No problem at all, mate. Absolute pleasure. Bulgarian Goodness says fantastic show, Tom. Can we make this a regular thing? Like I'm sure James will be back on very soon. But he's a very busy man. But appreciate the kind comments in the chat box. There's been plenty of them. If you have enjoyed the show, please do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the Gooner Talk. And of course, you can check out James's stuff on AFTV. We will see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.